A senior manager once told one of his staff that a customer calling in to say they were about to take their own life did not matter. Not because the call was unclear, not because they doubted it, because once that person hung up the phone, nobody would ever know whether they actually did it. So it did not matter. That manager worked at one of the biggest gambling companies in the world. And the person he said it to, a customer account supervisor who spent years watching what happened inside that industry, says it is still the worst thing he has ever heard anyone say out loud. Today I am going to show you what actually goes on behind the scenes at these companies. Not the advertising, not the responsible gambling banners. The real operation told by someone who worked inside it. Where are you watching from? Drop it below. The first thing you need to understand is how gambling companies see their customers. Not as players, not as users, as data points on a profitability scale. Every account is categorized. Every bet is tracked. Every win and every loss feeds into a system that places you into one of two groups, and which group you land in determines everything about how the company treats you from that moment forward. If you were losing money consistently, heavily, in large amounts, you were labeled a VIP. The best staff were assigned to you. You received personal attention, loyalty rewards, and every incentive designed to keep you comfortable and playing. The company invested in you because you were producing. If you were winning money even occasionally, even modestly, you were labeled something else entirely. Problem customer. Your account would be flagged with a marker that made clear this needed to be dealt with. Not helped, dealt with, because in this industry, a customer who wins is a liability. A customer who loses is an asset. And every system inside the company is built around that single distinction. The tool they use to manage it is called a risk rating. It is an algorithm. It runs constantly across every account, calculating how much each customer has lost against a set of internal metrics the company decides. And based on that number, it does two things. For anyone winning, it turns down the dial, limits what they can bet, restricts which markets they can access, makes it progressively harder to place a wager until eventually there is no point continuing. For anyone losing, it turns the dial up, removes friction, widens access, ensures the losses can keep coming with as little interruption as possible. This is not a bug in the system. It is not a flaw that appeared by accident. The person who described it from inside the company was clear. It is a design feature. The algorithm exists to ensure that those who lose are allowed to lose more, and those who win are quietly shown the door. You cannot beat this. Not with skill. Not with strategy. Not with discipline. The system is not competing with you, it is studying you, categorizing you, and then either extracting as much as possible or pushing you out. There is no third option. Now here is the part that crosses from exploitation into something much darker. When a customer says something that suggests they may have a gambling problem, anything that could indicate distress, financial collapse, or addiction, staff are required to respond. There is a process, a series of questions, boxes to tick, 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 and then it is done. Filed. The conversation ends. The account stays open. No follow-up. No referral. No action that would interrupt the revenue the account is still generating. Suicide calls, customers ringing in to say they were about to end their lives, were handled by senior managers only. And those managers were told to make a decision based on the perceived seriousness of the threat, to deal with it in the moment, and then to move on, because once the call ended, nobody would ever know what happened next. So it did not need to be carried further. The person who heard a manager say this out loud has carried it ever since. Not because it was an isolated moment of cruelty from one person, but because it was policy, because it reflected the culture of an entire organization, because it was said casually, as if it were simply how things worked. And in that company, in that industry, it was. But the damage is not only done to the gamblers themselves. Gambling is used extensively across the world to launder money. The person who worked inside this company was responsible for monitoring customer accounts, watching for patterns, flagging suspicious behavior, escalating concerns. When a cluster of accounts from the same country would appear in quick succession, matching email addresses, similar personal details, multiple signups within 20 minutes, it was a clear sign. A syndicate, an organized attempt to move money through the platform. When those accounts appeared in Britain, they were investigated, flagged, treated as a potential threat to the company. When the same patterns appeared in South America, account after account with matching details, arriving in batches, every single one was waved through. No investigation, no escalation, multiple times. The estimates from inside one company alone. Millions and millions of dollars laundered every year. One company, one set of accounts visible to one supervisor in one role. The scale of what is invisible from the outside is not something that can be calculated. But the person who saw it happen, repeatedly, with no consequence, reached one conclusion. The company knew. And the company chose revenue. Here is what makes all of this so difficult to confront. These companies do not look like criminal operations. They sponsor football clubs. They run responsible gambling campaigns. They have customer service teams and compliance departments and public commitments to player welfare. But inside, according to someone who spent years there, the culture is singular. It is about revenue. Every decision, every system, every policy exists in service of that one number. And anything that threatens it, a winning customer, a problem gambler causing regulatory attention, a staff member asking too many questions, gets managed accordingly. The staff who stay are either indoctrinated into that culture or miserable within it. There is not much space between those two outcomes when the thing you are helping to build is deliberately designed to extract money from people who cannot stop. The person who spoke about this did not leave quietly satisfied. They left feeling appalled, disgusted at what they had been part of. Not because they were naive when they started, but because seeing it up close every day, for years, makes it impossible to keep telling yourself it is just business. It ruins people's lives, takes their money, it breaks families. It turns sport, something millions of people love genuinely and completely, into a delivery mechanism for addiction. So here is what I want you to take from all of this. Every responsible gambling message you have ever seen from one of these companies was written by the same organization that built a risk algorithm designed to let losing customers lose more. The same organization that waved through laundering accounts when the alternative was losing revenue. The same organization whose senior managers decided that a suicide call, once ended, did not need to be followed up. The messaging exists to manage the optics. The system underneath it exists to manage the money. And this is not one bad company. The person who worked inside this industry described these practices as industry known, standard, expected, not unique to the company they worked for, just visible from where they were standing. The conclusion they reached after everything they saw was simple. If you are thinking about getting into betting, do not. Not because you lack willpower, not because you are not smart enough, but because these companies will not allow you to win in the long run. The system is not a game. It is infrastructure, and it was built to take your money, protect itself from anyone who might take theirs back, and continue operating regardless of what it costs the people inside it. Watch the next video. It shows exactly how prediction markets are now using the same mechanics, under a different name, with almost no regulation at all.